something else I want to talk about when it comes to this whole Ukraine and situation, which is just the hypocrisy of it all, and it's worse than hypocrisy because it's any benefit of the doubt, which I was very stingy with to begin with. What I'm trying to say is the worst interpretation you have of these people making these foreign policy decisions, that's most likely what closer to reality than if you were to give them the benefit of the doubt. Because the way I've seen this war in Ukraine be weaponized to advance imperialism, it's it's been ridiculous. So what I want to talk about next is the similar to the story that I tried to cover before. Biden made some comments calling Vladimir Putin a war criminal and saying that he needs to be tried in the International Criminal Court for war crimes in Ukraine. And is he committing ordering war crimes in Ukraine? That is very likely, because that's usually what happens in war. That's why war is terrible and war is bad. Once it happens, once you open the doors and you turn a city or a country into a war zone, both sides are going to do terrible things. So is Putin a war criminal? And not just in this case in Ukraine, but in Syria. He was part of the destruction of with the U.S. and Syrian government, everybody who was doing airstrikes in Syria and destroying cities in Syria. They did war crimes in Syria. But what I'm shocked by is the hypocrisy and the audacity for Biden, of all people, the arguably one of the biggest war criminals alive on this planet right now, to come out and cry crocodile tears and pretend like he's so outraged at the fact that war crimes are being committed and civilians are being killed, that we need to escalate the situation even further than it already is. And the media is going along with this, of course. Every chance they get to run a story that makes Putin look like the devil and Hitler, and they get the chance to run the story, they're going to do it. No matter if it's false, if they have time to verify it or not, which is escalating the situation and even more than it already is, and trying to let people's emotion drive their opinions on what's happening. And again, we're in the middle of this is the middle of a war, so nobody should be, as it happens, just reporting it without trying to verify it or anything like that. So that's a whole other issue with what's going on right now. But specifically when it comes to the issue of trying Vladimir Putin for war crimes in Ukraine, if he's guilty of war crimes, if there's an investigation and he ordered war crimes, yes, he should be tried for it, just like every other war criminal in the world. But like I said, it's just weird to me to see the people in power in the U.S. who order these even worse war crimes on a regular basis in countries around the world, using this as like a legitimate thing that they're actually care about. And to regular people who don't follow these issues, who don't follow war closely, they see Biden and crying his crocodile tears, and they see all the hosts on MSNBC and CNN talking about refugees and how their lives are being destroyed and things like that. And regular people think that this is like genuine concern for human beings who are the victims of war. But me, somebody who follows war, somebody who talks about war I've talked about war on my show since I started this show, and these wars have been something that I followed personally for years. I know that they don't actually care about civilians being killed. So I know this for a fact because for the all the time that they've spent ignoring all of the other wars that the U.S. has initiated and is actively participating in, dropping bombs and destroying cities, they completely ignore that. They won't talk about them for years. I think at MSNBC they went like over a year one time without talking about the genocide that we're facilitating in Yemen. So, but if you want an even just a more acute example of how they really don't care about the casualties of war, what happened when the Afghanistan papers came out? Documents from our own government showing that we were just there from the inception of the war. From they landed in Afghanistan, they didn't know what they were doing. They were just bombing random people, random civilians, covering up. Had a massive, elaborate scheme to cover up civilian casualties, and they turned the whole thing into a money pit and a money making operation, and turned Afghanistan into an endless war zone for the military industrial complex, and they lied about it to the public for decades. That's nothing I said there is up for debate. They all of, and of course committing war crimes on a regular basis throughout the entire time, lying about it to the public. None of that is up for debate. None of that is, we don't need to see any further evidence of that. If you follow what the news stories and you follow what was in their own words in the interviews that were published as part of the Afghanistan papers, that's exactly what's going on. That was what was going on in Afghanistan. And then when we learned that, was there this nonstop wall-to-wall coverage about the war crimes and war criminals and this war is so immoral, and oh my God, I can't believe in the 21st century people are out here slaughtering each other and destroying cities and uncivilized savages and all. Where was all this animation when we found out our own government is doing what's happening in Ukraine right now? We were doing it on a scale multiple times worse, and we were doing it for 2 decades. So, like, they clearly don't care about civilian casualties, because there's no way you see the Afghanistan papers and you are moved to your core. But when the Afghanistan papers came out, it must have been like, it was like right around the time of one of Donald Trump's impeachment, and within like days, nobody was talking about it. You couldn't hear about the Afghanistan papers anywhere. You couldn't hear about. You didn't hear about any further investigation, criminal investigations here in the United States from the people who were lying about the war, profiting off of the war, and covering up murdering civilians in Afghanistan. You didn't hear any conversation about that. To this day, there hasn't been a single investigation about the Afghanistan papers. So that goes to show you that given the proof and the mountains of evidence that civilians are being slaughtered, they really don't care. This is not an issue that concerns them. So when I see them, and again, all the crocodile tears about Ukraine, and again, it's not to say what's happening in Ukraine isn't a horrible situation. Any human being should be moved by, again, witnessing what's happening in a war zone, any war zone around the world. It's a horrible thing. And it should be like within anybody's human nature to want to do anything they can to make it stop. That being said, like I said, Joe Biden and all of these mainstream media pundits and hosts and people who regularly do the propaganda to facilitate more war all around the world and cover up war crimes committed by our government. When I see them crying their crocodile tears about Ukraine, I know 100% for beyond a shadow of a doubt that they're doing it for nefarious purpose. There's something sinister afoot here, and they really the war machine is working too well. The propaganda is too much in lockstep, and the emotional pleas about the women and the children and the war crimes and civilians being targeted, all of that is as it normally is being used to uh, push for more war. And that is a huge problem because where we're at, I don't see how it can escalate any further short of us just like literally putting US troops in Ukraine, shooting down Russian jets, and like literally engaged in the shooting war with Russia, the US and all of our allies. So it's very concerning to me. Yes, of course, the hypocrisy angle of it is like jaw dropping, and it's almost beyond comprehension. I'm over here. I was thinking about how I'm going to do this segment and to get across just how much they really don't care about civilian casualties, and there's nothing I can do to adequately describe it because of all of their coverage on, like I said, just the Afghanistan papers alone. That long example I gave on that, what's happening in Yemen and our destruction of Syria. Like, they don't care about any of those wars. Libya, they don't care about any of that. So now it's like I said, it's just to me when I see it, I'm not giving anybody the benefit of the doubt of like, oh, maybe they really actually care about the Ukraine. And of course, it's the racist angle of like, oh, it's white people, it's happening to white people. But still, I don't think that's what's happening. Like I said, I think the war machine is moving way too efficiently to think that this is anything other than manufacturing consent for escalating into a literal shooting war with a nuclear power. So that's something that I think everybody should be concerned with at this point and should be following. You also said they aren't just leveling places or doing Fallujah. Bucha is such a transparent false flag. And I'm glad that you mentioned Fallujah because I meant to talk about that during the whole segment. So imagine people who ordered were in positions of power during the height of the invasion of Iraq. People like Joe Biden, and all we learned about them using white phosphorus and depleted uranium in Fallujah, poisoning people with radiation on purpose. On purpose. And then again, for them to turn around and act like, oh, I swear to God, if Putin uses a chemical weapon somewhere in Ukraine, we have no choice but to start World War III with a nuclear armed power. Like, are you fucking serious? That's what I'm saying. Like, I cannot get across how bad faith all of the crocodile tears are. I really can't. I really can't.